Hi everyone, it's Emily Coralyne here with another episode of our Water is Love Talks. And today we have with us Skeena Rathor, who is a co-founder of Extinction Rebellion and its vision and the political circle, and also co-founder or founder of Co-Liberation.
Nothing is on its own. Nothing by
Exactly. Everything. We're all collaborative here. Yeah. And she's also the cultural steward for Indigenous Commons. And yeah, I just want to thank you for being here with us today. And Skeena also supported our prayer before we launched the film, where we had people praying at their water sources all over the world for the healing of our waters. And yeah, thank you for being a part of organizing that and leading us through. Um, yeah, and speaking of prayer, and I mean, for me in the film, a lot of what I remember in the creation of the film and in our work with the film is that we were always connecting to creator or something bigger than ourselves.
Mm,
And we felt it was so important to also connect to water
mm,
as a source of faith.
mm,
And in the faith, knowing that water is always there for us, it's always life bringing.
mhm,
And so, my question for you is what is your relationship to faith? What was it like growing up as a child in your faith? And
mm,
how did you make the bridge from faith to care for the earth and for the
mm,
waters?
mm, mm. Thank you so much, Emily.
Mm,
I wish everyone here that is listening such deep blessing for your water, for our waters,
mm,
and may the fluency and the blessing of water be with you. Um, so my mama was, she was a ceremony giver, and we also, we had a strong practice in our home where water, I have the bowl here, my mama's water bowl, which is prayer inscribed. Um, every Thursday night, for example, is ancestors' night, and water is at the center there. It's an ancient practice in, our homeland. So we're Kashmiri, but we actually were originally from Rajasthan, some part of our family, so in India, just like our Rajinda.
mm,
Yeah, so it's to bless with water is a given. It's just you don't really enter prayer without the redemption. Um, we say it as al-afua, al-ghafur, al-ghafar, meaning water is the redeemer and the reunifier. So before we pray, we always go to water for a practice, an anointing practice that is that redemption, that is that reunification, that is the blessing of the water. And we're asked to always do that before every, yeah, before we take our prayers, make our prayers, and in many other instances. So, for example, as a woman, when you're menstruating, this is a prayer that you give with the water, right? There are many places where water was the gateway to the way we entered into sacred space, or made holy, remembered remembered the holy divine. And so it was all, I don't remember a time, Emily, it wasn't
mm.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I grew with the blessing of water, is what I like to think. I mean, even before we drink, we say a blessing,
Mhm.
and also we were, as Shiite Sufis, we have it's probably the most, all cosmologies, they have the legendary story, right? Perhaps. And perhaps the legendary story is of the sacrifice of water, and that Imam Ali and his family symbolized the story of his family being without water. And so we also, in our culture of heritage, we are taught that to give someone water is the holiest act you can make in the world. And also to receive water from someone as someone bringing you, if I was to bring Emily water now, well, I would be consider myself the holiest person in the world. So this was all part of the daily living, you know.
Right.
Yeah, it was
Beautiful.
one big water festival.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, for me, it took me a while, right? As a white American woman whose family was Catholic, you know, there's always the holy water and the blessing when you enter the church.
Yes,
But
yes.
there was also something about stepping away from that institution for me and having to find my own way back to and to discover my own kind of faith.
Uh-huh.
And so it's, for example, like I asked my mom, why didn't you baptize me? Which is also a holy water prayer and baptism. And she's like, well, what if you wanted to be something else? You know, what if you wanted to connect with your Jewish heritage? Or what if you know, wanted to figure out what it was like to be a witch or something like this, you know. And she took me to the store and she bought me all these books and, you know, Conversations with God for Teens and Jewish mysticism and
Wow.
herbalism. And I thanks, Mom. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah. And I found like this combination of faith that brought me to like what seems to be the main idea, right, is to be connected to creation and
Yes.
to life giving
Yes.
and love.
Yes.
Yeah,
Infinite ways. Infinite ways. Yes.
infinite ways. And I know that for me, that experience of connecting to something greater than myself and this
Mm.
love for life
Mm.
connected me to the pain of the world and what was happening. And I realized that there's suffering, that there's destruction, that the earth needs us to protect her. And I'm wondering, what was that moment for you? Like, what was the moment you knew you had to like step up and stand in and use your voice? Because we all have our different moments, and I'm curious, what was yours?
Yeah. Well, from one of my best friends, or my allo, I think about allo mothering, you know, I think, which is describes shared mothering that really we've lost in the dominant culture. But there was an allo mothering that I had the privilege to receive, but one of my favorite allo mothers was a weeping willow. And I think she was one of my favorite allo mothers because she understood my grief. I was really heavy with grief from a very early age for lots of reasons. That is our family story. And so I needed to sit with her often, 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 often. And of course, in receiving her mothering as her child, then becoming her child, meant this love affair, you know, of course. And so I remember feeling desolate and horrified, shocked that these tree beings were not you know, were not being given the respect and reverence that we would give mother, right? I also worked out, Emily, that there was some connection that I'm only just beginning to understand now in these 40s, these years of my 40s, that there's something is connected with our tree beings and water. There's a consciousness connection, because I would find myself moving from the weeping willow to the river Thames, which I believe one of the original names is Isis, the river Isis of London. And so I would move between these two bodies in this body of water and weeping willow, mother weeping willow, and something was happening in terms of me feeling that beyond matter that could speak with me in a way that was gentle enough, tender enough, soft enough, quiet enough. Actually, sometimes, you know, we actually can't hear in the loud is, we can't hear the loud, right? I struggle to hear what's loud. I more and more, in fact, I can only hear the softest, quietest sounds, and I can't hear the normal sounds, you know. So that started something with being able to listen for what that is, what sound vibration, what frequency matter, what that love is, you know. And yeah, so that's how, where I would trace it back to. And then my mama was also in both our family lines. So from my dadaji, my dad's family were well, the modern way of saying it might be kind of opium dealers, but actually they were farmers of plant medicines. Okay, but we've made that wrong.
Right.
Right. So this is, you know, this is something that is there for me. And my mother had an enormous connection with, she was a guard in this culture. We would, in, you know, in these lands where she came to be married, she was a gardener, a prolific one in terms of the connection. I mean, our garden space was very, very small, but she had this amazing inside and out with plant beings. And so I obviously received from her that wisdom and that communication. And from my father, he had something that was connected to plant medicines that was within him that I feel I've received as well. And you mix that all together and you get a Skeena that really loves
Yeah.
really loves that biospheric beauty and all the beyond human being that is exquisite. It just is exquisite, offers exquisite love, just exquisite love, you know.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, that's a beautiful connection to and honoring of your parents, and I can see the love that that's brought through you and your presence and the very short time that I've known you and how you are. It's just very, yeah, as you said, exquisite, that exquisite love. Yeah, and um, in terms of your activism, right? There was probably also a moment where you stepped up into organizing and bringing
Yeah.
people together and needing to act. And there came Extinction Rebellion. And I'm wondering what was that moment as well for you, where you were like, okay, now I really have to organize and do something about this.
Yeah, I mean, my daddy took me into community organizing at 9. So it was an for me, organizing is because my mama organized ceremonies for hundreds of people as a, you know, like so frequently, you know, nearly every week there was some organizing that my house was at the center of as a child. So this was just something like normal. Organizing is just a normal way of being. It's just a way of being that is you know, intrinsic to our way of being. And I was politically organizing by 15. So what was happening the moment that Extinction Rebellion, you know, kind of boomed, exploded into my life, was that I had become, as my youngest daughter, she was 4 years old, and as she grew to 4, I made quite a very conscious decision to return to political organizing. And then, yes, I was in the deep depth of local political organizing here in Stroud, in the Cotswolds, in the Cotswold Hills, Gloucestershire in the UK. And so I was making connections, and I was an elected politician by the time Extinction Rebellion came along, and I was organizing something called Compassionate Stroud, whilst dear Gail Bradford was organizing Compassionate Revolution. And so actually I feel like our dreams collided a little bit. I felt strongly about my thing was social justice and free, liberation. And Gail's was, she was very convinced about disobedience and justice work of all kinds. And obviously, there were an original crew that started to come together around the Rising Up, which is the mothership of Extinction Rebellion as a campaign. Mm-hmm. Extinction Rebellion was only ever a campaign. It was never a movement, actually, formally. And at the moment was, as part of my research, to deliver a leadership program for the Joe Cox Foundation. I went to see Jem Bendell, Professor Jem Bendell. And this conference was called The Poetics of Leadership. Mm. And this is where he was his first unveiling of his paper of deep adaptation, which you probably know is now the most downloaded climate change paper in the world, right? And he kind of hijacked the conference without any, like, this was all a surprise for most of us. He had his inner circle that were in the know, but yeah, he unveiled his own research. This was the summer before Extinction Rebellion. And you see, as a mother, I have 3 daughters. My heart always goes there. Any information you give me, there's a reflex in my body that the first question my body asks is, how is this important for my children and our children? Mm-hmm. And so I heard him as a mother. And as a mother, I had to sit on my hands because my hands started shaking. And I actually had a full trauma response reaction. And I was looking around. It's like, that experiment they do where they put gas under a door in an exam room. They do this, social science experiment to see what, group collective think is like, right? And
right.
Yeah. And if no one moves, you can see it, but if no one moves, no one moves. Everyone thinks that it's okay. So I was looking around, waiting for something to move because of the gravity of what he had spoken around where we were in terms of the science of climate breakdown, and no one moved. And Emily, I have a number of hats. One is as a trauma therapist. And I understood what was going on for me with my mind. I also think I understood what was going on as a collective trauma freeze response. And I decided that I would rebel in that very moment, because as a mother, how could I go along with this?
Sure.
So I got up to leave, and I was very, very angry. And dear Rupert Reed followed me out, and I said some very strong things. And then dear Jem walked me to my car, and I said some very strong things. And he said, will you keep in touch? And I said, okay. Thinking, well, I might be sending you something in the post, young man. Right. So, but of course I calmed. And as I came back, I spoke to dear Gail, and then already Extinction Rebellion was starting to move through Rising Up. And we wept and we wept together, Gail and I. And then, you know, many things occurred, and within weeks we had organized a Stroud group, and then we'd recorded 2 weeks later we recorded the Heading for Extinction talk in her living room. I tried to change the name. I'm so glad I didn't get my way. Extinction Rebellion it was. But it, yeah, many things happen. The climate, you know, we declared rebellion in the October, and then we had our first rebellion in November, and then our second rebellion in April changed everything.
Yeah. Thank you for that intimate view into your experience receiving that information. And I know, I mean, I think that's a typical response for a lot of us, is this freeze and like,
Yes.
wait, like
Yes.
it's so big we can't even take it in. We have no clue what it actually means, because we are all in our capitalistic comfort.
Sure.
I mean, at least in the Western world, and that it's just so difficult to perceive. And I think that's what we try to show in the film, right? And where we have people connect to their love at first. I mean, how many films or documentaries start with a meditation of breathing through? You know, thank you, Joanna Macy, for this teaching of opening our hearts and breathing in love and breathing out love, and just connecting to that first and foremost before taking in information, right? And we really wanted to presence the pain of the world. And what that's like, and for people to at least for a centimeter or two open to the possibility of that grief, even if they haven't touched it before. Maybe, of course, many of us have, but just dropping into that, because I think, at least in my experience, that love and that question of like, how will this affect my children? And that is the most biggest love we can have. Yes. And the will to protect, and the will and the fight, and the yearning for a beautiful world that will last generations to come, and that we can do something. We can do something, and water retention and healing the climate through water is one of those ways, and it's a very important way. Yeah. And so I'm wondering for you, because you aren't so involved in Extinction Rebellion anymore, and you're working on other things, and what was it like for you to shift from that campaign or movement into what you're doing now? And what was it like for you to make that transition? Also, because I know for many of us in activist spaces, it is very campaign run, and we put our hearts into it, and we do what we can, and we fall in love with the people we're organizing with, and we fight with the people we're organizing with, and we repair with the people we're organizing with. And then all of a sudden it might end for whatever reason. I mean, I can say for myself, right? The film campaign is ending, and now what? And so, yeah, what is it like, or what was it like for you to make that transition away from that?
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, I'd like to go back actually to that moment in that auditorium where there was a series of presentations by our dear brothers who would be racialized as white, academics. And there was a non-response. There was a not, emotionally, there wasn't an engagement. And spiritually, something was trying to move. I remember especially a dear one read a poem in terms of acknowledging the grief as a father. But actually there was still waters. There was just still waters, right? And what I slowly began to realize, and I was already having much conflict and tension within my own system around what you might simply say a culture clash within me, coming from, you see, Kashmiris, many of us run in matricultural ways of organizing.
Mm-hmm.
The Garo people, the Jiantri, the Qazi, they are matriculturists. And what I mean by that is that they feel mothering as an original organizing principle. And it's an egalitarian, it is not gender based, right? It's an egalitarian way of organizing towards sharing resources, right? But it really is in respect and reverence of the first love of life, which is the love of the mother, right? The creation of all creation, mother, the love of all love, mother, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized is that something has happened within our what I call the mothering principle in Western consciousness, in the consciousness of modernity, which is part of the collapse. It is the polycrisis. It is the soil of what we've built these towers of Babel upon to fall, right? And when I talk about the mothering principle, we describe in the work of co-liberation that perhaps it has three impulses, three strong instincts. One is to nurture, one is to protect, and one is to create, right? Now, man, woman, non-binary, it's that these are the impulses in life. These are the core impulses in life, right? Of course, there are many others, but we suggest perhaps there's this holy trinity there, right? And of course, what we did is we evoked in Extinction Rebellion is we prompted and evoked the impulse to protect. But you see, what became slowly apparent to me is that without strong impulse to nurture, something goes amiss, and then the creation energy also goes awry. It goes off a lot. It's not aligned in life. Yeah, it's not aligned towards life. And then the other half of it is that, well, more than the other half, most people, their impulse to protect is atrophied, because in this domination culture, we are in there's an amazing book called Why Does Patriarchy Persist by Carol Gilligan, I think, and Naomi Snyder, where they talk about how in this culture, healthy resistance that a 2-year-old may have, where they will wail and scream on the floor against any threat of loss of relationship, that slowly, this culture disintegrates and destroys that, right? To the point that we have to numb ourselves towards that pain. So we do not act upon any threat to loss of relationship, generally. So this was the external problem that XR had, that there was this numbing, vast, prolific mass numbing. Sometimes we can call it in the trauma world disassociation, right? Disembodiment. There's a lot of dysfunction in that, right? But essentially our feeling state has been shutting down. It's been desensitized. There's a desensitizing that is happening and has happened. So this was playing out externally, then internally we were playing out in all kinds of internalized colonizer behavioral patterns, patriarchal patterns, right? And we slowly collapsed, of course, under the weight of that, under the absolute original heartbreak that is the bereftness of humanity, which is the defiling and the desacralizing of the mother. And that's so that by 21, that was very clear. By 2 years in, that was very clear that was what was happening. So this is where the work of co-liberation came in, because we needed to respond to this original trauma. How can we repair a world? How can we recover ourselves? How do we remember ourselves? These are central questions. And so the work of co-liberation, then this is how we moved together, some of us, into that work. And then it was in Samhain of 21, some of us moved to the side to create something called Being the Change, where we wanted to center the work of co-liberation. Essentially, we want to repair the mothering principle. We want to repair our capacity to love and resensitize towards love. And we want to create liberation, the liberation of love, but the liberation, the polycrisis is built on colonization and enslavement and control and everything that is the polarity of liberation. So the work is liberation. It's really clear. So that's what it's been. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fascinating to me how you describe the existing heartbreak about the destruction and the damage that's happened, and then on top of that, and on top of the group, there's this other heartbreak of like, oh, we're repeating the same stuff. Yes. Right. And I think I've encountered that in almost every single group that I've been a part of. And it's just in us because we are swimming in it, and it's our culture, and it's really difficult to escape unless you look at it, like you're saying, with the co-liberation work, like, how am I replicating this? How am I unconscious of these behaviors? And how am I ever gonna, support lifting the bricks off of each other to bring life instead of being life taking, right? And with all of this this weight and the information from Jem and the deep adaptation paper, and the also work of Vanessa Andreotti and hospicing modernity, and I know people who have read that book and gotten very sick for like a whole month. Right? Like it really does something to the system to take in that information and to process it. And yeah, you are a mother, and I would like to become a mother. And I'm just in this place of how could I possibly, right? Like there's a deep longing to be life-giving, and just such a fear and a right to the system, because we are in it. And how can you speak to what it's like for you to be a mother, or to have become a mother, knowing all of this, and what was how
and goodness, because my eldest daughter now, she is wanting to be a mother. She's 20, going to be 25 this year. So these are tremendous weighty questions to carry in your heart, and I want to honor all of our young ones who are having to walk path that where it's hard to see how one's children could be served by life, you know, how one's children could flourish. And you know, you walk with that question of flourish, you know, how is it possible for life to flourish?
Mm-hmm.
And Emily, yes, it is. Even now, this is my feeling.
Yeah.
My feeling is that our grandchildren will always call us. They will always call us. Life calls life. Life calls into life. Life calls forth life. Life always adapts to make life for life. Life always finds a way. And this is back to having faith in that, right?
Right.
Very basic. In our Sufi culture, we have we talk about the dimension of three trusts, three ways to trust, and that the foundational dimension of trust is inordinate, infinite trust of life, to be in service to life. And I think that there is nothing then that could make life wrong, life-giving wrong. How could life-giving be wrong? So that carries me as you know, mother of three daughters who will perhaps give life. I don't know. And at first, of course, there's grieving. Of course, there's something that I look at my children, and you know, there is so much devastation that they are facing into. There is cognitive decline, there is fertility decline, there is immune system decline, there is, you know, autoimmunity is, you know, is now almost part and parcel of life, as if, you know, it's being normalized, right? There is neurological decline, again, depression and anxiety, and you know, these are the World Health Organization are now saying that they're surprised that this is now the #1 cause of ill health in the world. Our soils are not holding on to water, right? They're collapsing. Our soils are collapsing. Our ecosystems are, you know, in collapse. Our oceans are, you know, yes, we know the suffocation. We know, right? We know that the breath of life is disturbed. We know, we see it in our own beings. As a trauma therapist, I see that people's breath is disturbed. And that means the whole system is in disturbance and dysregulation. And then we could talk at the political level of a polycrisis. As a body work and as a trauma therapist, I always think first at that, in that basis, and as from my Sufi heritage, I think of you know, the spiritual crisis as well, and then, you know, the matter of it in terms of the political, the mind that comes into the ologies, the axology of the story, right? The ontologies and the teleologies that we give ourselves to make meaning. These are very desperate stories we're in right now. The story of this time is desperate. It's full of despair. The thing I think to do in the face of that as a mother is to be in the creation energy of joy, of abundance. We're back to love. Everything circles back to love. Right?
Yeah,
to be, I think what I take care of with my girls is to create space where there feels deep nourishment and like there's abundance there. of course, life can flourish, because they're actually, in reality, even though this polycrisis is true, this despair is true, of course, the reality is still abundance. Our waters are still moving in beautiful flows. Our watersheds are still alive. We can repair our ecosystem. This is what we talk about in the film, right? There is a very direct, simple, sweet way to recover ourselves through water. And so I've been speaking a lot about that with my girls, because also in our trauma world, we are understanding that the water body is the way we would deal with complex trauma. So through the fascia, which is mostly water, which is fourth stage water, exclusion zone water. Some of us, will know about that. And we know that to repair life, we repair our waters inside us and in the cycles around us. And that this is very simple. So I talk to my girls about that simplicity a lot. We talk a lot about their relationship with grandfather's son, and how perhaps grandfather's son makes liquid light. That water, what is water? Water is liquid light. It's mostly photons that are light, right?
It's a miracle.
It's yes, of course, you have, as matter, you have H2O, but actually water is mostly light. So this is also how I healed from my breakdown. Is my Dadima, my grandmother, who passed many, many years ago. I reached out to her spirit for help. And Emily, she took my hands and she placed them in the water. And she gave me an instruction of how to move my hands in water. I am to dance my hand, according to my Dadima, I am to dance my hands in water. This is my repair journey. So this is what I'm doing. And I feel like I've received, my ancestors are instructing me. So, we can become light. We are light. We can, as light, we can repair life. As light, we repair the love that is life, that is water. Water is love, so it's simple. Simple. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's also the message that we want to share with people through the film, is that it is simple, and that we can put our hands in the earth, we can put our hands in the water, and we can heal ourselves and the earth. And yeah, thank you for this I don't know, insight and wisdom around bringing life into the world, and the power of joy and hope, and understanding that we're in this system, and that we have to feel it, and we have to balance it, right? And I think that's our jobs as mothers or potential mothers, and as anyone who is mothering, gender non-specific, right? Like that's what we have to do. We have to bring the joy. And if there's anything that I've learned at all from my Indigenous brothers and sisters and comrades, it is joy. Yes. It is joy. It is joy. It always comes back to joy. Absolutely. And I think that's part of the westernized sickness, is that it's so hard to access. It's so hard to allow ourselves to even feel joy, right? And so, yeah, thank you for that reminder.
And joy as beauty, and beauty as joy. Beauty, in our Sufi culture, we say love, truth, and beauty. If there were three pillars, again, this three is a very magical number, you know, um, the three pillars are truth, love, and beauty. And the question becomes, how do we cause beauty today? You know, how do we make beauty today?
And yeah, so I'm wondering what you're up to now and how people can get involved with the work that you're doing.
Mm. Yeah, we're up to many things. Us mischief, trouble. We were called, Emily, you know, we were called troublemakers. I used to say, actually, we're trouble takers. We're taking the trouble to become.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, so we the co-liberation work continues to develop. We will be offering it soon to organizations and movements and communities, as a way to come into quite an inquiry about, you know, the nature of liberation and all the dimensions within that. And then also I am with such excitement because I am working with an incredible movement called the Indigenous Commons. We have chosen water as our element to gather our spirit around. So we are using the language of water in all of our ways of thinking and being. And I talk about reshoring billions, so bringing billions back to shore, all this resource that has been hidden and stolen, and hoarded. We want to reclaim resources and flow, for, you know, the flow of resources as water reclaims itself. We believe that one of the mirror, you know, water is everything. So it has all the mirrors of life. It holds all the fractal energies of life. And as water begins to be liberated and restores its flow, these resources are coming. They are coming. So that we are wanting to rechannel the flow of resource towards indigenous lands. By the way, everywhere is some form of indigenous lands, right? We want to repair the waterways. And the very exciting thing is that we are being audacious enough to organize a governance system that is matricultural. I believe, you know, this is, of course, we have matricultures across the world that are in flourishing, are in, you know, are with. But this, I don't know if this has been done as a global movement before. And this is such an exciting moment that we would experiment with organizing in ways that matriculture, which is about unconditional radical generosity and about organizing resources towards needs, that will be the organizing system. And that's the work right now.
And they all find their way to make beauty today. And yeah, thank you for co-creating this beautiful conversation with me, and for being willing to share your insights and stories with our audience. And yeah, bless you, Skeena. Thank you so much for your work.
I'm so happy. I feel such the blessing of us. I feel the blessing of this work. This, you know, this, Emily, this work is actually a prayer come into true being for so many people. So many lineages are here with us. I feel our ancestors breathing a huge sigh of relief. They got there. And, you know, I just feel it strongly that we have been gifted this work to do, that is ours to do, that is to repair our waters and our water cycles, is to be remembered by her. And this is an absolute honor and joy. Yeah. And a prayer come true, a prayer come into being.